Hello, Dāli Rivera. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Excited to have this conversation with you.
I am excited too. Dāli provides professional development training that is specialized in leadership, team building, communication, and bullying prevention, which will be a big part of what we discussed today. Her family sought asylum from Nicaragua when she was 7 years old. As a new immigrant, she was made to feel very much like an outsider, which reached the level of outright bullying, unfortunately. She now is an advocate for people to find their voice after years of struggling to find the courage to do it for herself. Her company offers workshops, speaking engagements, coaching programs to help families raise confident, kind, and courageous children while creating communities rooted in respect and inclusion. How beautiful is that? She wrote a book that provides an extra layer of resources called Confident, Bully-Proof Kids. She holds a Master of Science in Women and Gender Studies with a concentration in social policy and leadership. And I found an interview where you said, quote, "I hope to be able to reach as many parents and kids as possible to let them know that there's hope and that there are people out there that will listen and help them," which I just think is remarkable and completely mirrors the work that I see you do in the world. Beyond Dali's commitment to making an impact, she's warm, curious, open. She's constantly making these offers to help. So about as sincere as they come. I'm just so happy to have you here on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much, Shanti. Yeah, I'm so excited. This is an incredible honor to be on your podcast with some amazing speakers.
I appreciate that. I've been very fortunate with the people I've had a chance to have conversations with here. What would you like to add to what you do professionally that you'd like people to know about?
Sharing knowledge is a passion of mine. So any opportunity that I have to speak virtually or in person, and I do it in any country that people want me to.
Yeah, and you can do it in 3 languages. Is that accurate?
Almost 3. Portuguese, I'm there, but I don't think I'm keynote ready there.
And then Spanish and English, obviously. So we'll go 2.5 languages. How's that?
That's right, 2.5. But by the end of this year, I should be fluent with Portuguese.
It's great. My wife and I just took a trip to Portugal. You and I talked about it offline, and it was one of my favorite countries I've ever visited. I'm jealous of your ability to speak Portuguese. It was a little mortifying to me to not be able to communicate with them in their language. I speak Spanish, and I thought it would translate better, and the pronunciations are so vastly different.
Struggling with that. And I can definitely understand it and read it and write it better than speaking. But that's, I think, very common when you speak another language.
Yeah, that makes me feel a little bit better about my experience.
Don't worry.
Thank you. I'll keep working at it. What about personal interests? You might want to share something that lights you up that maybe people don't know about you.
Okay, so this is extremely nerdy. Just saying this in front of my kids, they're like, oh gosh, they roll their eyes. I love documentaries. One day I was sitting in the living room with my kids and one of them was like, I wonder how the Baltimore Harbor was made. I was like, oh, I can tell you. And she was like, of course.
You said something to me once about experiencing big cities and what you look for when you go there.
Oh my gosh. See, this is the other nerdy part of me. So I collect experiences. So every time I go to a big city, I look up if they have a botanical garden, an aquarium, a rotating restaurant, and museum. And I rate them as if I'm some famous rater or something. Nobody cares what that means. But
of course they do.
In Dallas or San Antonio, the botanical gardens are the best. There are others that are wonderful too, but those are my favorite so far. And if you go to any of the rotating restaurants, know that the food's gonna suck. And the best every single time. New York, LA, it doesn't matter where. You can't go wrong with the wings and salads.
I love that rotating restaurants are this random addition to your list. What are your pronouns?
She, her.
She, her. Got it. What do you want the audience to know about who you are and you're navigating your career as an outsider story? What is your intersectionality?
Successful immigrant, a veteran, and a human being that's always seeking how to add goodness into the world and encouraging people to do that. And I do that by sharing knowledge because I feel like if you have the knowledge and you know how to use that knowledge, you can help everybody else change the world be better. I feel like that's so important right now because of the heaviness of everything that's going on is just suffocating the light and brightness out of everybody. And we need to really focus on the fact that there are more people that are good than bad, and there are more people doing good than that.
Yeah. I mentioned that your family sought asylum from Nicaragua when you were 7. And as we start to learn more about your story, if you could first talk about some of the circumstances generally that your family was experiencing in Nicaragua that made you need to leave.
This is what I remember as a child. I remember just hearing my parents, mainly my mom, always talking about we just need to improve our lives because no matter how hard you work in Nicaragua, you can only get so far. I didn't understand that then, but I do now because now I understand how the government works and how oppressive it is. We lived in one of the neighborhoods in Nicaragua called Ciudad Sandino. I remember watching my father and my mom's brothers build an outhouse in the backyard. I remember there was no tile on the floor. It was just dirt. And then eventually we had it installed. There's no AC. When you're a kid and you grow up like that, you're like, I didn't lack anything. You also don't know what you don't know. So it's not like I was missing AC.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that was.
And home is home. Home is where your family is, right?
And my mom's concern was that there would be another draft. There were stories about when I was born, the war was going on in Nicaragua and they had to flee from the city to my grandparents. And I was only a few months old and something about having to hide under somebody's house, under the floorboards. And I was crying. And apparently because I was crying, I wouldn't be quiet. My dad spanked me because the soldiers were looking for men and grab them and force them into the military. So my mom just did not want to stay. She just had this vision of having a better life for her children and not having to live like that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So your family arrives here and you didn't speak English at all at that point, or did you?
Didn't. Shanti, I remember I had to get on a bus and then from a bus to a train. And on that ride, my mom was like, you're going to have to learn English. Here, let's start. And we started with 1 through 10. I was just like, what are we doing? This is so unnecessary. I already know how to count. I was a proud 7-year-old because I was super smart. I knew how to read and write very early compared to most kids. And I had skipped grades. So I was like, I don't need this. So why do I need to learn this now? The numbers again in a different language. Little did I know.
And then you experienced both social and physical at one point bullying. And as we start to talk about this and your experience, I just want to invite the listeners to think of a time in your own life when you may have been aggressively teased or perhaps actively excluded from a group or made to feel less than, and what that was like. Because we talk about bullying and it's this term, and then you can disconnect from the feeling of it. Hopefully, listeners, you've never experienced bullying, or if you did, it was an isolated moment versus an extended period of it, like Dāli is going to be discussing. I know even there was this time when I was in elementary school, there was a girl who just started picking on me, and I was living in an apartment building, and I remember encountering her in the lobby, and I don't remember what she said, but I remember how it made me feel, and I was scared and remember thinking, what is it about me? What's wrong with me that's making her do this? Not what's wrong with her. And then there was this dread of going into the lobby and encountering her again. And it didn't last that long, thank goodness, but I'll never forget that feeling and knowing that you went through this for an extended period of time. So what was some of the social bullying that you experienced?
It was a lot of isolation, and people don't know that isolating people is a form of social bullying.
Yeah.
But it was oh, you don't want to play with that kid. You don't want to talk with that kid. Oh, don't pick her for the soccer game. It was like, not Dāli, not her. I remember there was a talent show too. The bully's name was Yadira. And Yadira was like, I'm going to do this talent thing and we're going to sing to Madonna. And I was like, ooh. And I knew the song my parents had played. So, oh my gosh. And I remember she reluctantly let me in. But it just felt horrible because I was like, what is it that this girl, what did I do?
And I know that there was name calling, right? There were terminologies that were used where you started to say, oh, okay, this isolation is somehow related to my background.
So when you arrive to the United States as a kid or as an adult, nobody sits you down and tells you the history of the United States and race relations.
Yeah.
I remember hearing certain things, and some of those things were repeated to me. One of them was, oh, you dirty wetback Mexican. And then there was another girl who was known to be a bully. I beat her at tetherball. It got really bad. And I'd heard people call her the N-word. Welcome back to Africa. And I remember she got really mad and we had this altercation and she said that to me. She called me a wetback Mexican and some other things. So I repeated, you go back to Africa, you, not knowing what the heck it meant.
Right.
The principal pulled us in, sat us down in a room. She did this, and I'll never forget this, in the most loving way. She asked each of us, do you know what a wetback Mexican is? She was like, no, not really. And then she asked me, do you know what a N-word is? I was like, no. And she said, Dāli, you never say that. That is a horrible insult. And she said the same thing to Calandria. And then I asked her, so what's a Mexican and what's a wetback? And she explained. I was like, oh, I'm not Mexican though. You got it wrong. She was like, what? So that led to not all Latinos are Mexican.
Shocker.
But even today in 2026, there are so many people who don't know that. So many people don't know that not all Latinos identify as Hispanic and not all Hispanics identify as Latino. But I like now that I'm an adult sharing that story. It's not one of my proudest moments, but I like to share that story to give people an idea of, look, this is how oblivious kids are, not just immigrants. Some do get sat down with their parents. This is why you don't say the N-word and the historically painful things behind it. But that was an eye-opener for both of us. But even then, Shanti, I did not get the full scope of it.
Yeah.
Then in 7th grade, we watched Roots. And that to me was such a shock. I had never heard of slavery or even heard the word.
Interesting.
And I remember the feeling, this cannot be true. How could humans think this is okay? There was a discussion. And I remember raising my hand. I really hope people don't think I'm over exaggerating, but I was like, how? How could they? How? They're humans just like us. They have babies just like us. They have limbs just like us. So emotionally just devastated and horrified.
Yeah.
And then later I learned this is why I look the way that I look, because colonization did that in a different way to Latin America.
And to your point, you get dropped in the country. There's no education about this. Typically, you're finding your way, your family's finding their way, and there's all of these cultural currents at play that you don't understand. And within that, can you talk about colorism and just how you experienced colorism?
It's crazy because you experience these things as a kid and you don't know the terms, but you know it.
Right.
And then you grow up and you're like, oh, that's what that was. That was colorism, or that was racism, or that was misogyny. Yadira, the bully, she was of Mexican descent and she was lighter skinned than I was. And I remember she was the one who started calling me out for being too dark and calling me India, which translates to Indian. On the history books, colonizers wrote everything. And so it comes from that perspective. Indians are the savages, the ignorant ones, the ones that need help, the ones that need saving. So in the Latino community to this day, that still exists, where if you are called India or Indio, it's an insult. And so I remember she said something about me like, oh, te ves como India, you look like an Indian. And she was lighter skinned and she dressed really nice. So the social bullying against me was, oh, look at her, she's an Indian. And she doesn't dress well. She stigmatized me as la India. And then kids started making fun of me because I was very dark skinned. I walked to school and back all the time. So I was very tan. I could tan like 10 shades darker. And then one of them started saying, oh, you're trying to cross over to the black side. And then the black kids started, oh, so you want to be black? I was like, oh my God. It was just horrible.
There's nowhere for you, nowhere.
Black kids would join in. Black kids would join in. Any Latino kids would join in. Yeah, it's brutal. Kids can be so brutal.
No doubt. And then unfortunately, you had an incident too that became now physical bullying, right?
Yeah, my last year in elementary school, I was walking home and I was at the end of my block and I kept hearing my name. And when I would walk, I would space out and daydream about stuff. Until finally I heard somebody calling me and I was like, no, that can't be. And then again, my name, and it got closer and closer. And then I turn around and this girl, she's Latina, she approaches me so aggressively and really quickly when I turn around. And she was like, oh, so you're Dāli and I don't like you. And I was like, what? And I was like, I don't know who you are. And she was like, I'm going to beat your ass, and starts saying all kinds of stuff. To be honest, I don't remember everything she said because it was just a blur. It happened so fast. And then next thing you know, she punches me. And then out of nowhere, all of these younger kids just start holding me, kicking me, pulling me. Some had my arms, some were kicking my legs, some were just punching me on my sides. One was pulling my hair. I was in shock because it happened so quickly and I wanted to cry. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to cry because that's what she wants. She told all the kids to let me go and they did. She was a ringleader in charge of all these little kids. And I was still trying to keep it together. And she's like, yeah, B, you want to cry, don't you? Go ahead, go on and cry to your mommy. I don't think I responded. I was just in shock. And then I picked up my bag and I just started walking home. And I got home and I didn't tell my parents because I remember my dad would always say stuff like, if you come home, if anybody beats you up, I'm going to beat your ass. And I was just like, oh my gosh, my dad's kick my butt if he finds out. And I think my mom spoke with him and told him about the severity of it. I'm assuming she must have said something like, she had no chance of winning, so you can't beat her.
Yeah. Do you feel like it was an extension of your identity?
It definitely was because she did mention something about immigrants.
It's crazy. I'm so sorry that happened to you. To get surrounded and physically assaulted like that is outrageous. You did mention that your dad said, if you ever get beat up, I'm going to beat you up. And not to dwell on it, but you have mentioned to me previously that there was domestic violence in the household. What is it that you want to share about that? Because I think it, along with the bullying at school, really impacts your experience of growing up and the rest of the trajectory you experienced.
What I would love for people to always keep in mind is that you never know what a kid is going through at home. Because even while I was going through all of that bullying at home, it was a hostile environment. It was dangerous. It was not safe. I didn't know if I was going to wake up to my father beating the crap out of my mom and me having to defend her, or if my dad was going to beat the crap out of all of us that day because he misplaced the remote and then it was our fault. You never knew. It was like walking on eggshells every day. And there was a moment when it got so intense with the bullying at school and then the stuff going at home. I would wake up like, oh, another day. I wish I wouldn't have woken up. Not to say I was planning, to hurt myself or anything. It was just like, oh, I'm tired of life. I just
Heavy.
specifically remember 2 songs that made me express the rage that I felt inside. And the other one made me feel the sadness. And that was Nirvana's Come As You Are. And I would jump on the bed and sing along with it and just jump really hard, like getting it all out. Now I learned that actually helped my nervous system. I had no idea.
Yeah.
As a kid, you're just, oh, I'm so angry and just letting it out. And then the other one that made me cry so much. Oof. And I'm getting emotional now, time after time.
Yeah.
I would sing that with so much heart and soul. And I was like, I've never been in love, but I just want somebody to keep me safe.
Yeah.
Anybody, please. And I remember telling my mom, I would rather live under a bridge than to live with this man here. Like, I can't leave him. He has a job. He pays all the bills. I can't work. He won't let me work. All of these obstacles. And I was just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I wish you would leave him. And she wouldn't because she thought she was doing the best for us.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that completely.
I don't blame her because being an immigrant, she didn't speak English. She didn't have work history in the United States. She was completely by herself.
Do the best you can. And then you had mentioned to me that sometimes you would miss school because you would want to not leave your mom. You didn't feel safe to leave her at home.
Yeah, there were some moments where some of those fights where I was just like, I don't even want to go to school because she needs the support.
Yeah.
And then also the other part was, I don't want to go to school because I'm just going to have to go face those bullies again.
Yeah. So you're not safe anywhere. You're being told eres India, which is a judgment on your worth and your education. You are missing some school because you're wanting to keep your mom safe, also because who wants to go face all that stuff. All this is accumulating. How does it start to really impact you internally?
I remember in elementary school, I had these horrible pain on my chest. It was so intense that it felt like all the blood kept rushing out of my body and I had to hover over my desk and just pray that it would pass. It was almost like I had to hold my breath and I would get really hot and it was super painful. It went on for a long time. So I would just sit there. This is happening in class, by the way, and nobody notices. Also, because I was missing school, I was falling behind. And remember, I said I was confident and smart. I had that mentality. And, math is one of those things that builds on itself. So you can't just hop in here and I'll just figure it out. And so I started thinking, I'm not smart like I thought I was. What's happening to me?
Maybe they're right.
Maybe they're right. And the other thing I want to share, there was this guy who asked me out. I was like, yo, he's cute. Yeah, sure. But what was devastating 2 days later is that I found out that it was a bet. It was like a joke. I dare you to go ask her out, the kid that nobody likes. So I share that to say, please talk to your kids about this. It's horrible. It's social bullying because you're being made that joke.
That's devastating.
And so all of that was going on. And then I was not focused. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't focus. And then I was always sleepy too because my nights were not peaceful. I would wake up to stuff going on. One night, I had to call the police on him because he had a gun. He was trying to shoot my mom.
Outrageous.
He left by the time I was 14. I was in high school by then because he was a breadwinner, right? So I had to find how to make a living and how to pay the rent. I was also the interpreter and immigrant kids because we're always translating everything. We find out a lot of things that we shouldn't. It's none of our business. So you're forced to grow up faster. I knew all the issues, most adults handle, not kids.
Sure.
And so I remember at one point we moved a lot. We moved into somebody's house for a few days. Then somebody from church owned us a furniture store and he built a teeny tiny little apartment. I'm telling you, it was maybe 80 square feet.
Wow.
So it was all 6 of us kids and my mom, one bed. And then from there, we went back to that house we were in, and then we were finally settled in housing. I remember I would sleep a lot.
You finally got a home where there wasn't abuse and you were settled and your body was trying to rest after years of never being able to rest.
I had fallen behind in school too. To this day, I look back and I'm like, I was just trying to catch up.
Yeah.
I remember my friends taking these AP classes and I felt so much shame for not being able to do the same thing.
Right.
I was just taking the easiest classes. My school counselor, I know he meant well, but I really wish he would have pushed me. I really wish he would have said, no, Dāli, you can do this. And this is the plan. Here are the tutors. You can do this. Instead, he was like, this is the easiest one. I don't think you'll be able to handle it. And then hearing him telling me, I don't think you can handle this class, he translated it as, I don't think you're smart enough.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, with all that had unfolded and was unfolding, 10 being the highest, where would you say your confidence was at this point?
Oh, it was definitely that 2 or 3.
Understand. Years later, you join the military and you're in a male-dominated, needless to say, environment, and now experiencing a new form of harassment. So this is continuing. And at the same time, I know you're very grateful to your time in the military because it forced you to finally stand up. So if you could tell us the kind of harassment that you experienced in the military.
So early on, the type of harassment was, you're too young. What do you know? Your competence. No, you can't do that. Oh, you women. Oh, it was just terrible. I was a mechanic. And I remember I chose to be a mechanic because I wanted to do something that I could talk about. I was like, oh, grandma was badass to my grandkids.
Nice.
But it was always about my gender, that I was too young, and the race one. That came later as I gained rank. It got intense because they wanted me to lead their way. So when I wouldn't, they would retaliate and do things like try to humiliate me in front of my soldiers. They would assign me to really tough tasks and I would excel. But then when promotions and recommendations came around, they would say no. I would ask why. I was good enough to do this. I shined. I even got an award for it. And now that I'm asking to go to the promotion board, you're saying no.
Yeah.
How fair is that? And then I remember I got what they called a sick call profile, where the doctor gives a note saying Dāli can't do this because she injured herself. There was this one guy who broke his ankle because he was drunk at a bar. And then I had a profile to wear tennis shoes because I was pregnant. And they came down on me so hard. How dare you wear tennis shoes? And I remember telling him, excuse me, but homie over there, he broke his foot because he was a dumbass, because he was drunk at a bar. I'm creating life.
Yes.
And my feet are swollen. And you're crying about me wearing tennis shoes?
Man. There was one incident where you were leading a group of soldiers. You came back from the field after a week and everyone was exhausted.
Yes. If you've been in the military, you know what it's like to go out and play war in the heat, especially when you're at Fort Hood and it's so humid and you're exhausted. You have to come in and immediately clean all of your equipment. You have to wash everything down, let it dry, put it back in the truck, and you have to put it in the trucks in a certain way. And you have to do a schematics of where everything is. And so I remember we were done after having to reset the whole truck. And my soldiers were like, when do we get to go home? I'm like, I don't know, actually. I need to ask that. And they're like, yeah, could you ask for us, please? Let us know. Just have an idea. I can call my wife and let her know. I go and I asked them and they laugh at me and they're like, what are you doing? You're over here cuddling these soldiers. I was like, I think that's a valid question. We haven't been home for over a week. People's spouses need to come and know when to pick them up. And they were like, no, you're being soft, Sergeant. That's not the way to lead. You don't let soldiers tell you what to do. You tell them what to do. It's like, drop and give me, start start pushing. I was an E5. So an E5 is a newbie leader. And at that point, I was like, should I? Because I can choose to not. But I grew up following authority and afraid of challenging authority. They're men bigger than me, and it's a military. You do what you're told.
Yeah.
So the threat was always, I'm going to take away your rank position. So I dropped. I was doing push-ups and my soldiers were walking by. They let my soldiers go home. So they would walk by me as I was pushing.
Wow.
Talk about a form of humiliation. Like, okay, we're going to let your soldiers go. You're going to pay for it. And I remember I actually cried and I was looking down, thank goodness. But I was like, these fuckers, I'm like, this is so unfair.
Yeah. You're a woman, you're soft, you're babying them, all that. There was so much of your life, not just in the military, but this buildup of being bullied. What made you finally say, this is it, I'm standing up?
There was a situation where there was some fraternization going on. And it was one of my female soldiers who was an E4 with an E7 from another platoon. And my supervisor wanted to move him into the shop, knowing what was going on. The guy was married, she was single. And it made me really angry because I would hear people talk about women and they used her as a representation of women in the military. And I hated that it was, women speak their way to the top. And I was like, not me, because I'm trying to make a career out of my military experience. And she was on the way out and she didn't care. I was like, I know it affects me, but damn it, this is how corruption and things get established if nobody speaks up. I was like, I'm not going to be complicit to this. I'm not going to turn the other way and pretend like I'm not seeing it. I'm going to speak up. And I had this really scary conversation with this person who was deciding to move this other guy into our shop. But before I did that, my mentor, thank goodness for him, he told me, you have to speak up because this is what leaders do. And you have to do it in a smart way. So I asked another E7, another sergeant first class, who was a friend of mine, to just be in the room with me for two reasons. I was, again, afraid for my safety physically because that fear stayed in me forever for a long time. And because I wanted a witness. This person could easily turn around and write me up and say, take her rank because she did or said this when I did. So I needed a witness. I had that conversation. And I remember it was so scary that Shanti, I was there and I was practicing stand upright, chin up, shoulders broad, don't show weakness. But my voice was quivering. I hated it because I was like, dang it, I'm trying to be strong. But apparently it helped because the next day I found out he had decided to not move that person in.
Yeah.
He never spoke to me after that. You could feel the tension. But that right there, that was, I think, the turning point for speaking up. And at that point, I realized I spoke up not just for myself, for everybody.
Yeah.
Because I remember the majority of my soldiers who were male, they were tired of the drama.
Yes. It was undermining the fabric of the team.
Right.
And I hear the importance of mentors in there too. Your mentor saying, yeah, you've got to stand up and do what's right, and giving you some extra courage and clarity about what to do, which is what you do now in your career, which we've talked about your anti-bullying work, and that originated with you now finding your voice and standing up for yourself and for other people. And now you're a mom and you have a 5-year-old kid who, after all this that you've been through, is bullied.
So my baby was 5, who got bullied by another 5-year-old over something super small. And I realized that little boy that was bullying my daughter was being bullied by his siblings to bully my daughter for having turned him down to be his girlfriend. Of course, the first thing a parent does is they report it to the adult that was present. And in this case, it was the bus driver. The bus driver tried and nobody would speak up. So she said, I can't do anything. I have to follow the protocols for bullying investigation by my company. And I'm thinking, my company, the school. I go to the school, principal says, oh, that's out of my jurisdiction. And I'm like, jurisdiction? What is this, police? You hired this bus company. So in my parent eyes, you need to handle this matter. You need to do something, follow your policies and implement them and kick these boys out at least for a few days so that they know, like, this is not right. She said, oh, I can't do that. And it dragged on for a whole year, that whole first year of elementary school. At first it was my daughter, but then it became other kids too. And I was so frustrated because I kept hearing policy or protocols. I was like, let me read this. Where is this? Because you're telling me you're following it, but you're not explaining to me what it is. And I realized, how come I never asked this question? How come I've never heard this? I only found out because it was happening to my child.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not the only parent that experiences this. I was also very involved PTA parent. I was so involved. I was volunteering teaching. I was always in communication with teachers and the principal. And until I read it, I realized this is something that parents need to read. Because if I had read it earlier, I would have proposed some of the solutions within it because they're all very different. Some are very detailed and some are not. And then I understood why it was hard for the principal to suspend the kids, because they have rubrics. They have these rules where if this is offense number 1 by this kid and this is how bad it was and this is what we can or cannot do, it's important to read it. And I tell parents to this day, whether it's at work, read your harassment policy, see what the investigation policy says, and try to work with it. And if you don't like it as a parent, you can go to school and propose a change.
Yeah, but first understand what the current situation is. And then if that's not feeling like it's supporting what needs to happen, then you can go through a process.
Right. And I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it's easy, because it's not. You can only change so much at the school level. But if you want deeper change, you have to go to the school district, to the school board meetings and present your case and why.
Yeah. So you started before you brought this into your actual career, just advising other parents for free because you kept digging and kept digging. How did that unfold?
Yeah, I would have conversations with the parents and I was like, oh, you know what? You can do this. And then some of them would say things like, Daddy, you should really give us a class on this. I was like, okay, cool. I'll do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
First, it was like a little chat with parents.
Yeah.
A few dads. And then it was more like, hey, do you want to present on this? And I said, yeah, sure. I'll put a slide together. And then I realized the conversations went on far longer than they were scheduled because people were very interested.
Yeah.
I did that for 7 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And then 2017, I was laid off from my job and I decided to give it a go and offer these presentations, these workshops to the schools, because I still see that gap of communication. They need to educate parents to empower them. And they said no at first, but I piloted the first 6 workshops one summer, not expecting people to show up, and the rooms were packed.
Amazing.
I was so shocked. It was incredible. I was so happy. So I tweaked a few things, and then that's how the Diversity and Anti-Bullying Academy was created. And I added diversity because I told you my daughter was asked out by this little boy, and he and his brothers called her horrible names for having turned him down and talked about girls in a horrible way. So I was like, you know what? That's misogyny. That is also toxic masculinity. And me and my gender studies brain.
Sure. Yes.
I thought I need to talk about diversity, and I'm like, no, this is not how it should, So what I tell parents is read the policy at home and educate your kids at home, because what they're being taught at school is for them. You are not being taught how to advocate for your kids, so that policy is going to be like your study guide. And
right.
There's different statistics out there. They say 1 in 3, some say 1 in 5 still.
Too many. Just too many. Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing and so admirable that you just kept digging and digging to understand the policies and the gaps, and then took your knowledge and shared it informally with other parents, and then your desire to help address the situation with bullying, and then the need that you saw because people kept showing up. You made it into your career. It's just really amazing story. So that brings me to a segment that I've started. It's called the Thrive Takeaway. So if listeners remember only one thing from our conversation today, one thought, one piece of advice, what would you want them to carry with them so that they can thrive in their own careers?
Be inquisitive. It doesn't matter how crazy it is to want to know about how something is done. Just learn about it. Ask questions. That is the most empowering thing you can do for yourself, aside from speaking up for yourself, because when you have all this knowledge, then you can figure out how to use it to work for you.
Yeah.
So don't be ashamed of being inquisitive. Go for it. Ask the questions. Watch the documentaries.
I was just going to say, full circle to sharing knowledge and watching documentaries. That's fantastic. That's today's Thrive Takeaway. If you're listening and something in the conversation stayed with you, I invite you to check out my free Thriving Assessment. It's an opportunity to see where you're already showing up powerfully and where hidden patterns may be holding you back. You'll receive customized results and practical tools to support small shifts you may want to explore. You'll find it at shantijoygold.com. Okay, that brings me to my next segment, which is It's My Podcast, so there will be music. I love music, and I believe that it's like storytelling, a mirror into our souls and connects us back to our humanity. So if there were one song you could put in a time capsule and preserve at all costs for future generations, what would it be and why?
Duke Ellington's In a Sentimental Mood.
So cool of a choice. I hadn't heard it, which is embarrassing to me. It's such a beautiful song.
There is just something so beautiful about the melody, the tone. And I know the title is In a Sentimental Mood. Some people might think that's a sad song.
Right.
No, to me, it brings peace, beauty. It makes me think of everything gorgeous of life and of the world.
Yeah.
It ties to the humanity, down to the darn mitochondria.
It hits you at a soul level.
Yes.
And it sounds like it provides almost like Time After Time was different because it was, you wanted a safe place, but I don't know, does it hit that same chord for you?
Yeah, oh my gosh, you just made me realize. Yeah, so Time After Time was the I'm in pain, please come, somebody, I need pain relief. And In a Sentimental Mood is, oh my gosh, I found.
That's beautiful. I actually just got chills when you said that. Love that.
You just helped me realize.
Awesome. I'm glad. And if there were one thing you could go back in time and tell young Dāli, what would you want it to be?
I would tell her, do what you think is impossible. Just try it anyway, because at least you will have tried. Honestly, I cannot believe my life turned out the way that it is.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I tell myself, something I've recently started telling people is I'm a pretty wealthy person. People think of wealth as billions in your bank account, but I don't have billions in my bank account. But I'm freaking wealthy.
Mhm.
I'm so fortunate. I have a good quality of life. I have a beautiful home. I have good health. I have wonderful kids. I've had a great journey with this business. I know I have put out goodness into the world. I encourage everybody to do that, even in the smallest way. Could be greeting your neighbors every time you see them.
And this wealth that you've accumulated in the ways that you've accumulated it is no accident. You've really worked through a lot and you've stood up and used your voice in such powerful ways. It's really beautiful to see. And along those lines, if you could tell people more about the work you're doing now and where they can find you.
Thank you so much, Shanti. Yeah, so you can find any of my free content on Instagram at Dāli Talks. I'm also on LinkedIn. But if you are a leader at an organization that provides services to families and you want to link up with me to coordinate some workshops or a keynote for a special event, reach out to me at DāliTalks.com. On DāliTalks.com, you'll learn more about me, read the blog. There are links there for my podcast as well. And if you have any question whatsoever, just reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm so inspired by you and the work you do in the world. But even beyond that, I think just who you are in the world and your sincere desire to help through your work and as a human. And I find you to be so open and curious and sharing knowledge you've said multiple times. And that doesn't surprise me to hear you talk about as a theme today, because I know that's an anchor for you and it is so powerful. And you've shared so much of your knowledge with me and I'm extremely grateful. So thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, everyone. That brings this episode of Stories We Haven't Shared to a close. I believe stories are our humanity waiting to be shared, and listening makes it possible. Thanks so much for being by our virtual campfire today. And thank you so much again to Dāli Rivera. Appreciate you. Take care. Bye.